My name is Peter Fossel. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hydrosat. We are a remote sensing company, so we are a satellite company that is imaging the Earth. And as a satellite imaging company, I have to start this discussion with one of my favorite satellite images, which is not one that our company took. But this is the first image taken of planet Earth in around 1969 by the Apollo 11 astronauts. And this image really was humanity's first selfie in a way. It was the first time that we had an opportunity to look at our planet from space and see, what we looked like. And this image did so much to kick off the environmental movement around the world. This image did so much to inspire the first Earth Day. And the reason is we can see quite clearly how different we are, how unique we are as a planet. We're this bright blue shining orb in an otherwise cold, dark backdrop of space. And of course, what makes us different is water. It's the water that covers over 70% of the Earth's surface, that forms, evaporates and forms cloud vapor that falls as rain. And it's what makes life on Earth, and indeed everything else that we do and we talk about, possible. And around 10,000 years ago, we did something tremendously important for us as a species, which is we started for the first time to harness this water in the form of irrigation. And so this movement, around 10,000 years ago, started in Mesopotamia, allowed us to move from being a hunter-gatherer civilization to put down roots, to grow an agricultural surplus that allowed us to form first villages and then towns and ultimately cities and civilizations. And so again, it's our ability as a species to harness and use water that's made everything in terms of human civilization over the last 10,000 years possible. And that's been a really, really positive story for around 10,000 years up until today. So what you can see here, the green line on the bottom of this chart, is the amount of agricultural productivity growth that we're currently expecting to continue into the future. And the top line in magenta is the amount of agricultural productivity growth that's needed in order to meet the demands of a growing world. And so most of the studies coming out of the Food and Agriculture Organization, of the UN, the World Bank, say that we need to double food production as a species by 2050 just in order to keep pace with population growth. And that's a massive challenge. Now, I want to look at one country in particular, which is very important to our company, which is India. As you probably know, India recently became the most populous country on Earth. It's also a major agriculture producer. It's also a major agricultural exporter. But it's perhaps one of the most water-scarce countries on the planet. And in terms of per capita water availability, India crossed what we call the water stress line around the turn of the millennium and is rapidly approaching what we call the water scarcity line, which is the time in which there isn't going to be enough water per person in India to meet the country's needs. And what happens when there isn't enough water per person in the world's most populous country? A lot of scary things. Scary things from a humanitarian perspective, scary things from an economic perspective, and very scary things from a geopolitical perspective as well. And that's where our company comes in. And really, if I could define our mission around a series of metrics, it would be, what if for every agricultural field on the planet, we could see a 50% increase in crop yield per acre, while seeing a 30% decrease in required water for irrigation per acre to grow that same amount of crop. And what happens, what's really interesting, is when you reduce the amount of water that you need in order to irrigate effectively to grow food, you also reduce your electricity consumption. because in many cases, electricity is used to run the pumps that pull groundwater to the surface to make it usable for irrigation. Electricity runs the center pivots or the linear pivots that actually spray the water across the fields. And in many, many parts of the world, that electricity comes from a diesel generator, which is, as we know, a very dirty burning source of fuel. And so by reducing your water use, you're reducing your water electricity needs, which also comes with a major cost reduction associated with it, and with a carbon reduction associated with it as well. And so this isn't just a mission and a vision. This is what we're actually starting to do. So currently, our product, IRRAwatch, is in use on over 4 million acres of farmland in 38 countries around the world. We're tremendously excited about that, but there's over 1 billion acres of irrigated farmland in the world. And so we have obviously a huge amount of opportunity in front of us as a species, really, to combat what we see as one of the major challenges of the 21st century, which is how can we grow food more productively per unit of water. And I'll just give you a couple examples here, and then love to open it up into the discussion. The first is a local example. So this is our IRRAwatch portal, currently in use, currently available to every farmer in Madera County, right here in California. So we work with the county government for their water management. And then this data is available on a daily basis, every single day at 10 meters per pixel, to look at soil moisture and crop productivity at the field level. And so that data is in use and available to every single farmer in the county. But it's not just, as I mentioned, it's not just a local challenge. We are, as a company, active in 38 countries. Here's another example of our data in use in Kazakhstan. So we work with several international partners. This particular one, GeoBox, works with the government of Kazakhstan to help manage their canal irrigation systems. And we're providing them the underlying data in order to do that. Now, all of this data comes from satellites, and that's how we're able to reach areas in India, in California, in Kazakhstan, in Guatemala, everywhere that we do business, because ultimately it's a global challenge, and global data sets are needed in order to address it. So with that, I think we'd love to have a good discussion.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yes.
First question. So, I may have missed this, but tell me, the resolution that you're capturing is beyond what a lot of other satellite images are out there. Can you talk a little bit about the technology that you're using to collect this data?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. So we use something called thermal infrared data. So for those more scientifically or engineering-minded in the audience, it's long wave, part of the infrared spectrum. But how I like to think about it is we are a contactless thermometer. So we talked a little bit about the pandemic a few times today already. So in keeping with that theme, we all remember, maybe you were entering an airport or a restaurant, and somebody put that sort of temperature gun, if you will, at your forehead and took your temperature from a distance. That's exactly what we're doing, but with a much more sophisticated contactless thermometer that's around 500 kilometers above us, orbiting the Earth several times a day, and that is taking the temperature of the Earth's surface. And from temperature, we can measure the amount of moisture content available to the leaves of crops and measure what's called their evapotranspiration. So how much they are essentially sweating or transpiring to cool themselves off. If they have enough water available to them to do that healthily, their temperature stays nice and low and cool within a good range. If they're under moisture stress, that temperature starts to rise because their ability to transpire or to sweat turns off. And we're able to measure that in real time from space using thermal infrared data.
Cool, and we'll open it up to the audience in a minute, but before we do that, having this space view and this high-resolution imagery, is there anything in your observations that surprised you that was like, wow, you know what, because we have this perspective and this technology, we discovered something new?
Yeah, one of the, and this is, again, really to, core to the value that we're looking to unlock and to drive. A lot of places in a lot of parts of the world, a lot of farms in general, are actually over-irrigated. So people are using more water than is necessary, which is bad from a water sustainability perspective. So we as society and governments and regulators care about that for obvious reasons. But it's also bad for growers because when you overwater any plant, if anyone, I killed a basil plant recently, so I'm sure that's yeah. I mean,
well, you tried to bring it through the winter.
Yeah,
it's really hard.
Exactly, and that's that should be an easy one to keep alive, right? By overwatering it.
Satellite
right?
couldn't see it.
Satellite couldn't see it because it was indoors. Thankfully, if it was outdoors and a lot bigger, probably wouldn't have happened. But that same dynamic, frankly, occurs all over the world, where, and particularly again in a place like India, where electricity is massively subsidized for farming, you have the ability to pump groundwater. So in most cases, fields end up being over-irrigated, and that hurts the ultimate crop yields. And so what we found is by giving real-time data to end users to say, hey, if you were to irrigate 20%, 30% less, you would actually see your yield per hectare improve 50%. Well, that's more money in your pocket. That's more food to produce, more food to sell, and you're also reducing your inputs. Yeah. So that's core to what we're trying to do right now. On 4 million acres, and looking to expand that around the world as much as possible.
All right, I promised the audience a question. We'll go right here in the middle.
What is the alternative that satellite imaging is replacing, and how do you compete, or maybe what circumstances do you need on the ground where your solution is competitive versus, I don't know, going out in the field and using that pandemic thermometer to do it yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. So satellites offer scalability, global reach, and global coverage, which ultimately allow us to deliver this data at a very, very low cost comparatively. And for us, and I think this is so true with really any climate technology, the economics have to work. If the economics don't work, the sale is never going to happen for the business. If the economics don't work, the adoption is never going to happen for government and for society. So the economics absolutely have to work. If you're going out, in the field with your, handheld FLIR sensor, which you could do, your ability to get, to cover 10,000 acres or 100,000 acres, it's simply not possible, not scalable. Plus, if you're looking at different sensors, being able to calibrate all of those, different measurement devices so that you get a consistent reading that's, representative of where you want to irrigate, also very, very challenging. So to come back to your original question, in most cases we are expanding the market for data-driven agriculture decisions to places that are currently not using any data sources. In certain places, particularly with high-value crops, drones or aircraft are being used to image, but that's very expensive. Very high variable costs to run those types of systems. And so again, if we want to have an impact, it can't be limited to the Central Valley of California. It has to be able to work scalably, economically, efficiently in Guatemala, in India, in the Middle East. Otherwise, it's never going to have that kind of breakout impact, and that's why we use satellites.
Yeah, and also the price. There needs to be a price for the water that's being used. The resource needs to have some value in order for all the economics to make sense. I think we have time for one more question. We'll go right here.
Great presentation. 2 questions. One is, what is the least resistant path to scale, in terms of how you're thinking right now? And can you elucidate a little bit more about the business model?
Yeah, great question. Maybe I'll take the second one first. So we are a B2B or B2G, business to government business model, and we run on what's effectively a SaaS model, and we are priced per area for an annual subscription. And so we go to market in the U.S., dollar per acre per year for auto-renewing annual subscription. Our business does better when our customers sign on additional acres. Most of the rest of the world, we're pricing euro per hectare, but same idea for an annual subscription. In terms of scalability and easiest path to market, that's actually one that we've thought a lot about. We did start with a direct-to-agribusiness approach, and indeed some of our most loyal customers over the last couple of years have been agribusinesses. But even your largest agribusinesses don't cover that much territory. And so what we've started to do, and the example that we showed with Kazakhstan is a good one, although albeit a little bit smaller, is we've started to deliver this data directly to governments, whether, again, it's a county in California or an entire province of a country like in Kazakhstan, because there we can cover hundreds of thousands or millions of hectares with a single contract, with a single buyer. And so for us, that's been a much quicker and more effective way to get this data into the hands of users and covering as much territory as possible much more quickly.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Really exciting technology. Thanks, Peter.